Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Matt and I do like video games, and in today's video we're starting the week exactly how we started last week, talking about Redfall, but we've got even more details on it than we had last week. So let's get right into the video. And you can actually see it all here. I've got it brought up, but you can see we have a pretty huge article from Games Radar here. The format for this video is actually going to be a little different than anything I've ever done before. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to read this myself, and I'm going to read out loud the parts that I find to be particularly interesting. I'm going to expand upon them, or at least expand my thoughts upon them. First up, the article is called Redfall Isn't Arkane's Left 4 Dead, It's the Studio's Spin on Far Cry. It says, we speak with Arkane Studios' Harvey Smith and Ricardo Baer to dive deep into Redfall, one of the most anticipated Xbox Series X exclusives of the year. And they aren't lying. This is one of my most anticipated games of the year in general, not even exclusives. But the article starts, few video game developers have as clear a creative mandate as Arkane. The studio has become synonymous with deep world creation and smart environmental storytelling. Thank God someone acknowledges it, man. These Arkane deserves so much more credit, and goddamn, it's about time someone has started giving that credit to them, because they very much deserve it. Okay, so just in the second paragraph here, there's like a really cool thing I want to read real quick. It says, Redfall isn't special because it is bound by the same threads that, make up their previous games. They talked about Arc Fatalis, which I have not played that. I need to play that. Dishonored, Prey, Deathloop. They talked about how all those games kind of weave together the same game design, and they're saying Redfall isn't special because it is bound by those same threads woven so tightly with arcane magic. It is special because it is willing to loosen them. Now this is really interesting to me. I'm assuming this is Harvey Smith talking here. It says, it's certainly true that if you work on the same thing for long enough, you eventually want to clear your head and stretch a little. Maybe we stretched too much this time. We probably should have picked either an open world or cooperative multiplayer, but if Redfall comes together at the quality we think it will, then it will be a different beast. It's really tremendous and it does a lot of cool stuff. And reading that just intrigues me even more, because we've seen interviews with Harvey Smith. I mean, I think it was Miranda Sanchez at IGN about 6 months ago, around the time that the Xbox showcase happened. She sat down with Harvey Smith and talked about Redfall. And Harvey Smith in that interview was pretty clear in hammering home that environmental storytelling is still a huge part of this game. And the thing that I love so much about Arkane games in particular, it's probably one of my favorite things in gaming in general, but Arkane does it on a level that I don't think many studios do, and that is environmental storytelling. And it's one of the great things in gaming, in my opinion, because there's so many games that came out last year that were phenomenal. Plague Tale Requiem, God of War Ragnarok. I played The Last of Us Part 1. I played the remake, so I played Last of Us again. I mean, there's so many games that have told fantastic, amazing stories, but there's not many games that can tell you a fantastic story without it being just shoved in your face, handed to you on a platter, if you know what I'm saying. Arkane games do it a little bit differently. Yeah, there's the story that they tell you, but there's also tons of story to be found in hallways and alleyways and decrepit buildings. There's tons of story that I might find on my playthrough that you won't find on your playthrough. And that's really what I enjoy about gaming. It's when a game does that, that's when it really hooks me. And what's funny is I've noticed that this is something that Bethesda studios in general do. From Bethesda themselves all the way to Arkane. I think Arkane's probably the best at it. But even a studio like Tango Gameworks with Ghostwire Tokyo. I've only played a little bit of Ghostwire Tokyo, but the little bit that I've played of Ghostwire Tokyo, there's a good amount of environmental storytelling in that game. And I feel like it's something that's not so focused on anymore in gaming. And I love it when a studio really leans into it and keeps that alive. And I really love this next part, especially the emphasis on this next part. It says, Redfall isn't the video game that you think it is. Following its reveal, the Xbox Series X exclusive, I don't know why they're calling it the Series X exclusive. It's on Series S as well. And it's on PC. I don't know why they're calling it the Series X exclusive, but whatever. Has drawn comparisons to the Left 4 Deads of this world. Great games, concedes Arkane creative director Ricardo Baer, but not exactly what the studio is shooting for. He says it's totally understandable for someone to come to that conclusion. There are 4 playable characters, you can play together cooperatively, and you're against the undead. But in terms of the way that you play and experience Redfall, it's not like those games at all. Redfall is more like loading into Far Cry. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I fucking love Far Cry. I know there's tons of people who hate it. There's tons of people who hate it with a passion. I'm not one of them. I love it. So really, when I look at Redfall, I'm just looking at my favorite developer giving its spin on one of my favorite series. That's just fantastic. That's phenomenal. That's like a dream come true for me. They also talk about the size of the world in this game, saying that it's much bigger than what we come to expect with something like Prey and Talos 1 from Prey, but it's kind of smaller in terms of, you know, a traditional open world game in 2022, 2023. And this is exactly what I want to hear, because I don't want Arkane to go big for the sake of going big. I want them to go what's big for them, because they feel like they can do it. I don't want an Assassin's Creed Odyssey sized map just for the sake of having a map that size and shoving content in it. I want them to do what is considered big for them and fill it with as much content as they possibly can. And that's exactly what this game sounds like it's going to be. And here's exactly what I was alluding to earlier when I mentioned environmental storytelling. He explains that you'll still have the freedom to approach missions, areas, and in-world locations with the same curiosity and ingenuity as you could in Dishonored or Prey. Some of Redfall's most powerful moments come from wandering around, absorbing the world, and getting caught up in the high action for a moment. That was the atmosphere we set out to create from the beginning, and that is just so damn good to hear. They also mention in this article that Redfall doesn't feature vehicles, and that's one of the key distinctions between it and a game like Far Cry. This might be their Far Cry, but this isn't Far Cry, and they are sure to make that distinction. And it says, in terms of freedom, there's what you would expect from other open worlds, but Redfall is an on-foot game. The scale and the pace is a little slowed down in that respect, says Bear. We want you creeping through a cornfield at night in the fog, hearing vampires whisper in the dark. Maybe you'll spot a farmhouse in the distance and sneak over to it, only to find that it's full of cultists and a few trapped survivors who you can save. That's the kind of vibe that Redfall has. Also, I was just reading through this and I saw this that I wanted to really point out because I thought it was really cool. It says, Redfall sometimes feels like what you'd get if you blended the Arkane creative values with Far Cry 2 or Stalker. I've never thought of Arkane's take on Stalker, but that sounds pretty fucking awesome, honestly. They also mention how time of day will affect the game, and not just from a visual standpoint either, because that's what I was thinking when they were saying this before. But it does say Smith doesn't mean from a purely visual aesthetic either, with the time impacting everything from how viable stealth is before combat erupts to how the various factions appear in the world. Vampires may spawn during the day but remain dormant, becoming active at nightfall. They also mention right here, it says, in co-op there is no restriction on multiples of the same vampire hunter joining one party. Although Smith says that there are benefits to having a well-rounded group outside of the variety it will bring to combat. And this is great because I know I want to be Layla when I play this game because she seems like the most badass character, honestly. Either her or the sniper, but I want to be Layla. So basically, if I'm playing through the game as Layla and one of my friends wants to join, but they're also Layla, we can do that. But there's also benefits to one of us not being Layla. One of us maybe being someone who complements Layla's skill set and Layla complements that person's skill set to bring out the best in each other, which does help for dynamic gameplay, which is another thing that's great to hear. The rest of this paragraph is brilliant too, because it says, we have a very dynamic dialogue system where depending on what heroes you put together in combination, they will talk to each other and get to know one another. And we have a mechanical system where the longer the heroes play together, the more intimate their dialogue lines become, and eventually they'll get a game mechanic buff called Trust Buff. So there is reason to continuously play together, especially if you're playing as different characters. And considering the fact that this is an FPS game, this paragraph here might be the most important paragraph in the entire article. It says, even with a renewed focus on advancing supernatural powers, Arkane knew it had to get the gunplay right. It says, there's a certain level of work you have to put into a shooter just to reach the minimum bar, because you will inevitably be compared to all the other shooters out there if your guns don't feel good. It says that the studio hired in FPS experts at the outset of production and even looked to the broader Bethesda network for assistance. We got insight from some of our sister studios. The people who worked on Doom came over and gave us feedback a couple of times, things like that, and we were pretty happy with the results. And you guys might not know this, but I love Doom. Doom 2016 is one of my favorite shooters of last generation, and Doom Eternal, another fantastic shooter. Now, these are just the highlights of what I chose from this article to really hone in on, and I'm excited about all of it, but there is definitely more in this article. I will leave a link in the description if you want to check it out yourself, because in fact down here they actually talk about the power of Game Pass and how it pertains to Redfall specifically. And they talk about how, you know, the games that Arkane makes might seem a little more niche nowadays to the average gamer, but Game Pass presents an opportunity to show what Arkane can do to a much larger audience than, you know, they normally would have without Game Pass. And that is definitely true. I mean, if you just look at the history, regardless of the praise that I give Dishonored, I mean, Dishonored is like a top 3 series in gaming, in my opinion. But like, regardless of the praise that I give that series, most people haven't played Dishonored. Dishonored didn't sell well. But the fact that you put an Arkane game in Game Pass, now it reaches way more people than it ever would have reached before. And I think this is a great opportunity for them to really flex their muscles and show what they can do, especially diving into things that they haven't really done before. Open world, multiplayer, cooperative, that's going to be awesome. But go ahead and leave a comment down below. Let me know if you've read the article. If you have, let me know what your thoughts are on the whole thing. Leave a like if you like the video, and if you're enjoying this kind of content, want to stay up to date with it going forward over here on the channel, the best way to do that is to ring the notification bell. Maybe hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because that helps you stay up to date with everything that goes on over here. And it really helps me out with the channel, helps the channel grow, helps me get seen by more people, and I really do appreciate that in the long run. And with all that being said, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.